I'm Caleb Orosco. I'm the Executive Director of the only and oldest policy and advocacy organization in Belize. Our work centers around legal research to examine the socioeconomics of our LGBT community. Part of the process of our advocacy really is to advance social debate and transformation using litigation. Section 53 back home is part of our criminal code. It's literally two sentences. It speaks to the idea of a natural crime. For the natural crime, it doesn't matter what kind of sex you do. If it's not sex between a man and a woman and traditional sex in a missionary position, it's a natural crime. So in my country, most people were unapprehended felons. And so for us, it was a case about adult privacy. It just so happened that it was a gay man who took the issue to our Supreme Court to challenge the constitutionality of Section 53, and I won. After the decision on August 10th that declared the Section 53 of the sodomy law unconstitutional, people were inspired to be more visible, to scream their support. People were kissing publicly. I've never seen that before in my life. And so the case created a psychological shift in our community that change is possible and that they can be part of that change. But the point was that we placed government on the spot internationally for them to understand they must respond to their LGBT citizens. And so where we're at now is safeguarding the decision around Section 53, which as a sole claimant, I believe I have won, and in continuing scaling up our political engagement process to ensure our community understands what the decision is, and for us to move forward with other reform priorities, that we can show the rest of the Caribbean that it is possible for LGBT individuals living in small island states to fight back and win.
To build a movement or to create change, people have to talk first. I'm Julius Kagwa. I'm the Executive Director of Support Initiative for People with Congenital Disorders in Uganda. Intersex is being born with a physical anatomy that does not conform to the typical male or female classifications of sex. It does have some health implications for some, but it is also a problem on the social front. But of course, there are mental health issues in that as well. I was born intersex and raised in the first few years of my life as a girl, taken to a girls' school until around 17 when I couldn't hide anymore. During adolescence, certain things start happening or not happening, I actually decided to discard the female image. But I was comfortable taking on the male side, which was naturally coming out on its own. Yeah. It was one of the most difficult times I've ever been through. Down the road of my activism, I realized that a lot of mistakes are done when parents very quickly and out of panic run to doctors to try and fix something that they think is not okay, because most of the time it's okay. Because for me, it was okay, really. I was very, very accepted initially until I began to speak about gay issues in addition to my story. Then the story changed. The mission of CPID is really to present intersex in an objective way, to create awareness and to educate, to make sure that that secrecy is gone. In our work as CPID, we found that the biggest burden lies on the mothers. They are not able to take the pressure, so they kill the babies. Over 50% of our mothers don't give birth in hospital. It will be just a consented decision between the birth attendant and the mother. For us to break the silence, we have to work with giving support to the mothers. That means that we have got to educate that intersex is not a curse, as they were told, and explain to them in a language they understand what it actually is. CPID has been placed on the maternal and child Health Technical Committee of the Ministry of Health. That was a great, great achievement. Recently, we had the Registration of Persons Act passed by Parliament. So they actually gave us a clause in there. You can register the child can change its sex as long as there's medical documentation to prove that. It is a first step. Of course, there are many gaps in there because they still refuse the word intersex for being part of the LGBTI. They wanted to use the word hermaphrodite. And we thought, you know what, okay, let's get in there, and then during our outreach in schools to get the young people's thinking about this word, and then go back to Parliament and tell them this is how people feel when you call them that, and have that amended. I am very hopeful. I was hopeful when there was no hope. This is just the beginning. Yeah.
St. Lucia is a very small island in the Eastern Caribbean as a country. The theory is that we are Catholic and we are moral, and we try to adhere to the rules of the church. My name is Maria Fontanel, and I am the Communications and Advocacy Manager with United and Strong. United and Strong exists to create an enabling environment for LGBTI persons to live their lives freely. And of course, the laws that we have inherited from the British include the sodomy law. And that is one of those on our books that have not been struck down. It has just become ingrained in our society, and we don't even analyze where it came from and why it is that we do what we do. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and as a woman, I've always felt in conflict with the church. When I was supposed to have made my first my confirmation, I didn't do it because I had too many questions that they just could not answer. LGBT people on St. Lucia have lived a very closeted life. They are people who tend to just live under the radar just simply because of their sexuality. So they had these really awful, horrendous murders of gay men. No one has ever been arrested. No one has been charged with the crimes. Most LGBTI persons don't finish school or don't feel comfortable enough in school to focus because of the stigma. They tend to very often not finish school. They have difficulty keeping a job. People get put out of their homes by their families because of their sexual expression or their gender identity expression. And poverty is a major problem. I cannot just sit by and watch that happen. And that has really caused me to be involved in advocacy. Our first office was burned down, of course, within a month of opening. We had a very successful workshop with police to try to sensitize them to the manner in which they treat LGBT persons and the manner in which they should be conducting themselves on the job despite their personal beliefs. We have held workshops with the LGBTI community themselves and activists to kind of arm them with the information to better do their job, to document where possible, to keep themselves safe, to keep their organizations safe. We ultimately hope to have policy change, so we've been trying to engage with our government. We have been able to hold a regional workshop almost every year for the past 4 years, and that has included not just LGBTI NGOs, but NGOs that are concerned with women's rights. The United Nations is one of the areas in which United and Strong has been able to engage, which is very important for us because it's one of those spaces where we can have access to ambassadors and to ministers of government who we would not otherwise be able to meet. So these opportunities, while they give us a chance to speak to the outside world, they also make the people at home sit up and take notice as well. We have had some progress because the Labor Code, 2005 Labor Code, actually states that somebody should not be dismissed based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, which is the only place in our law that it's actually mentioned. But the fact that it got in there, it's great. And I think if we work on that level of using international instruments and commitments that the government has made and seeing that they implement them locally, they may not strike off the Burglary law, but it might be inserted into the law in different places to afford protection to LGBTI persons.
Namaste, my name is Abhinay here. I am from India. I am working with Global Action for Trans Equality as an HIV consultant. As a human rights activist, I've been very much engaged into working on LGBT rights, sex workers' rights, and people living with HIV. In India, transgender people have been called by different names. So like for example, we have Hijras. Hijras is ethnic community. I am a Hijra, but nobody forced me to be part of Hijra. I became part of it because I like the rituals, I like the processes which was there. Deep down my heart, the sadness about being somebody different, the sadness about loneliness was aggravating. I said to myself that since I'm not gonna die, let me try to live. That I'm here for a purpose. Until that purpose is not finished, probably I'm not gonna die. I'm here to create change. And that change should begin within myself. And that transformed my life completely. I started looking at myself positively. My work with the community for more than 20 years taught me a lot of things. I ended up listening to a lot of stories. I used to handle helpline. I formed an HIV positive group, and every time I kept listening to different stories, my stories started shrinking down in my heart. There was more and more inspiration from those stories that made me more stronger, more committed. A lot of transgender people run away from their house at the age of 13 and 14. They have no support. Sometimes they start begging early age, sometimes they go into sex work early age. There's a huge amount of sex work in India which is associated with trans women. More than 80% of trans women has been found out in sex work some or other way because they don't have jobs. The economic dependency is only on begging or sex work. So it's very ironical because on one hand they've been treated as gods because people believe that hijras are somebody who will, if they will say something, it will come true because they are neither man or a woman, they are divine. There's a huge amount of violence because when you are on a sex work, you are vulnerable. You are vulnerable from your sexual partner, you are vulnerable from police. There are a lot of people who are living with HIV in transgender community. How do we ensure that transgender gets a quality health care? When the doctors are not trained, a lot of hijras go for a castration. They die because of it, because they do castration with the quacks. Transgender sex workers' issues are much more critical because they don't have rights. They've been murdered by people and there is no official counting about it. So a lot of transgenders are dying. The healthcare is very poor. We fought in the Supreme Court and there was a NALSA judgment which came in April 2014 which said that there is a separate gender called as a third gender for transgender people. And they should be given equity, they should be given security, they should be given equal rights, they should be given opportunities. And so I have got a passport that says third gender. And after 2 years now, government came up with the transgender policy, the rights of transgender policy. Unfortunately, that policy is also not supportive to the transgender. It doesn't have any connection with the Supreme Court judgment which was given. This policy is not inclusive for trans men, other sexual identities, intersex people. The policy doesn't talk about rights of individuals. The policy doesn't give you an opportunity to employment. Indian trans community is very organized at this point of time. We are very powerful and will make sure that government has to listen to us.